At the beginning of this film, we are shown a nighttime scene where a strong light in a field of crops in the village actually destroys the crops. That light was a magical horse. Later in the morning, when the owner of the field sees this scene, then he becomes sad and calls his 3 sons to him. He tells his youngest son, Ishan, to watch the field at night so that he can catch the thing that was destroying their crops at night, Ivan. During the night watch, he sees that gigantic horse and is absolutely amazed by it. Ivan realizes that their crops were destroyed by this very horse, that magical horse, to catch it. He laid out a lot of rice and curd, but as soon as that rope is put around the horse's neck, it starts to run very fast. And with it slowly begins to rise into the air. The horse, as soon as it lands, even falls in the middle of the field and gets hit. The horse falls into a bird. Upon seeing it, Ivan feels pain. And Iman rescued the horse, but still the horse was sad because Ivan had tied it with a rope, who sees this condition and frees him. As here, there was a very good man, the horse, with the release. As soon as the horse is very happy, and from there in a moment becomes invisible the next morning when sleep breaks, then he sees that there are 2 standing in his stable, which seeing he becomes surprised, and then he moves to a small house whose name was Flower. With this song, he could talk. He tells her that I am that mother's son whom you had rescued last night. The little horse also says that my mother is very happy from the heart. For this, she has sent me with these 2 horses to be of help to you. The result also, with the remaining 2 beautiful horses, meets and is happy. He plans to sell those remaining 2 horses in the market. He will earn a lot of money. But in all of this, Imran's father comes to him, and to see him before being caught pole-eye, he suddenly departs from there faster than electricity with Khan, and this feat leaves Ivan amazed. But later he realizes he has left the other 2 horses in the stable. However, using his magical voice, he brings the other 2 horses to him, after which they both set off towards the city to sell the horses. Upon reaching the city, the townspeople are amazed to see Ivan's beautiful horses and want to buy them. Aryan realizes something bad is going on, so he suggests to Ivan, "Can we go and sit over there on that bench? The horses could get some rest." But now no importance is given to his words. We didn't have much money anyway, so we had to sell the horses to the townspeople accordingly, and the auction of the horses to the townspeople begins for sale. On the other hand, it is shown to the king that the king of this kingdom lives a luxurious life with plenty of wealth in the royal treasury. Looking at the town through binoculars, at that moment his gaze falls on Ian's beautiful pair of horses. The king is amazed to see 2 beautiful horses and thinks, he ponders how such a poor boy came to possess 2 such beautiful horses, and then goes to ask the queen and wants those horses from Ivan for riding, but the king leaves without paying for the horses. On the other hand, Ivan asks the flower to help, and with its magical voice attracts the horses to him, and those 2 horses start approaching the king at the assembly at high speed. Unable to control the speed, the king falls on sacks of flour and gets covered with flour on his face, hands, and body. This makes the king very angry, and he then demands payment for the horses. The king agrees, but the minister gives him advice. If life is to be kept responsible for looking at the horse, then vengeance can be taken. The minister's advice pleases the king very much. Accordingly, the king appoints Imran to take care of the horses. Meanwhile, Ivan's popularity grows throughout the city, which the king did not like at all. The minister again bestows wisdom and says to Ivan, if ordered to find the firebird, he will never be able to complete the task and will not return, because to date, all who went on this task have not been successful, and after returning will be punished for disobeying the king's order. Then the wisdom was very much liked by the king, and the king goes to the imam and orders him to find the firebird. Up to now, all who went to seek the fiber have mostly died because the fiber kills everyone. Meanwhile, someone must set off with imam because the king has ordered him, and then both of them set off to find the fiber. Paul harnesses his magical power. With it, takes Ivan to a jungle, and upon arriving there, they find many sleeping nuts or almonds. Actually, the 5 will not be caught easily as it will kill, and the sleeping nuts must be with them, and if somehow the fiber is made to eat those sleeping bars, then that bird will fall asleep, and that is the opportunity to catch the bird as well. Then they both come to a quiet desert in the middle of an island, where this fiber used to live in abundance all around, without spreading that sleeping, not to scatter the earthy smell of sleeping. Smelling that fiber, starts eating peanuts one by one, and after a while, he realizes that someone is around him. That 5-3 one, and as a result, they attack the fruit, and somehow from there they both start to fleeing. Suddenly that fireball comes in front of them near Yan. Then there was only one sleeping, which he throws towards the bird, and that sleeping not. After eating falls asleep at home. That's when Iran captures the bird with an iron chain and keeps it captive. When the bird regains consciousness, then it feels very sad, and tears were falling from its eyes, seeing the condition of the bird. Imon feels very sad, and he releases it fine at home. He is very happy, and he opens up his wings and leaves from there. Before leaving, he gives a beautiful feather to Ivan that was shining like the firehouse. Then he returns to the phone and the king, and comes back to the king and tells that event in front of everyone. Explains how hard it was to catch the pervert, and then he feels pain and leaves his father. No one believed him, and everyone thought it was funny. As proof, Ian shows the feather, but by then, the boy had wilted like the other feathers, and then the king sentences him to death just for speaking. At that moment, Faber arrives and rescues the imam. Thus, everyone is convinced that he is now telling the truth. Having no alternative, the king reluctantly promotes Ivan. Imran's popularity increases throughout the night, and the kingdom's people keep cheering for him, which the king did not like at all. So he decides to, somehow or other, he will have to kill Iman. Then the minister comes to the king again and gives a plan to find the ice princess, which would be good, because it's hidden on a weak mountain peak. From there, surely he won't be able to bring her back this time. The king quite likes this idea, and then the king orders Iman to find the ice princess, orders to take those 12 flowers with him to find that princess, sets out with the intention to find her, thus telling one that searching for the ice princess is akin to seeking one's own death. But God does not give much importance, and thus with the help of reaches near the cave, but in front of that cave was a thick wall of ice, which was impenetrable by any of them, so they could not enter. At such a time, the magical feathers of the firebirds create a torch of fire on the wall of ice, and all the ice melts into water, and in the current of that water, the flower burns down below. But at this point, that was not of any importance. He enters the cave and sees many princesses are sleeping there. With the help of that magical feather, now finds the real princess and tells the princess to come with him. But the princess does not agree to anything and says, there is no more brave man in this world, so I will not marry anyone with that. She jumps from the high peak of the mountain in order to save her. So jumping behind, but princess special kind of dress. There was because of which the princess could rise into the air, but this time was falling down. But the princess saves him. However, because of some mistakes of Iran, the princess's dress gets punctured, and they both start falling down at such a time. Then he opens his wings there and saves both of them. After that, they spend a night in a jungle, and he calls saying that you have fallen in love with the princess, so don't go back to the king. But like every time, he doesn't listen to it this time either. And the next morning, he goes to that king. The princess comes along this time, and seeing this, the king is very shocked. And like every other time, the king proves to be false on the other hand. Event becomes more popular across the kingdom. After that, the ministers tell him not to worry because the princess's arrival has been advantageous to the king. He will be able to marry the princess. Hearing about marrying the princess, Ivan becomes very sad. Then at night, he takes a flower, goes to the princess. The princess, seeing it, becomes very happy. The princess and Ivan fell in love when in such times the king's men arrived there, and Ivan had to leave subsequently into the royal court. The king directly proposed to marry the princess, and the princess directly rejected the king, saying, I cannot marry until I find my grandmother's lost ring, which is inside the belly of a giant whale. The king begins to think, how is it possible to retrieve it? Meanwhile, there Ivan comes, and the king advises him to find that ring, and he agrees. During the evening, Bella was a bit worried because this time she has to go with Imon. But now she doesn't know where that ring is, so she asks her mother for help at night. Her mother arrives there and shows that the ring is in the belly of the whale, which is now transformed into an entire island. The next morning, Fall with Ivan sets out to find that ring, and while passing over that island, Jan loses balance and falls into the sea, falls into the water and sees a whale underneath, tied with several chains, and that's why the whale has turned into a whole island. Then both of them go to the whale, and it tells them that by mistake it had swallowed a ship, and for that it has been chained. But now it realizes its mistake and wants to correct it to be freed and to release it. An idea comes to their head, even full of dust. They enter through the whale's nostrils, for which the whale gets a big elephant, and as it laughs, all the ships come out of its belly and the chains break, and it becomes very happy and gradually disappears into the depths of the sea. Iman's princess grandmother's ring forgets to ask for, but at that moment a crab arrives and returns the grandmother's ring to Ivan. Actually, the whale had understood the words of Iran's mind. Then the prince takes the flower to the princess and gives her the ring. Looking at that, the princess became very emotional, and then Ian proposes to her and the princess agrees to marry. But immediately the minister sees them and detains and imprisons her. On the other hand, the minister sees a flower at the window and shoots it, causing it to be wounded and fall to the ground. The next day, the princess sees a chick, and the little chick helps her reach near Iran. The princess schemes silently. She shows the king the temptation of regaining youth and says if he dunks in a pot of hot water, he will regain his youth. On the other hand, to punish Iman, the next morning, a boiling hot water, a cold water, and a hot milk are placed, but as those large pots are tipped, in the first one where there is hot water, there if her princess's ring is dropped, it will cool down and nothing will happen to Ivan. On the other hand, in the cold water, a foot. Magical feathers are needed for India, though, with warm milk. Wherever there is a need for the life and death flower, which needs to be brought by addressing Princess Flower to bring it. To go yet, how will the flower be arranged within such a short time? I will bring, as I already trust Princess Flower, whenever necessary. And the flower goes to bring that flower. While picking the flower, she is told that by plucking this flower, it will perish, but the flower does not heed to those words and keeps bringing it. On the other hand, the prince is thrown into a pot of boiling water. The princess cleverly drops her ring into the hot water, so nothing happens to Iman. Then Ivan is thrown into a pot where ice forms in cold water. The magical feather then departs, and the prince still survives. After that, Ivan is sent into the warm milk, and by then the flower does not reach. Everyone keeps worrying. In just a while, the flower brings the life and death turned upside down and arrives there. As soon as he was fed, Ian emerged from that pot of hot milk. A prince starts to come out in his form. On the other side, the king was youthful and reached the boiling pot of hot water, and upon touching it, a bubble forms and he floats to the edge of the sky. That king, after he leaves, Ivan is made the king there, and they both get married and approach the flower. And the flower was very sad because at the time of life and death flower picking, it had been told that it would die. Then the princess says there is no reason for worry. In fact, it was your heart that was being tested. Hearing this, the flower was very happy. They live happily and peacefully in that kingdom. And cheers spread across the whole realm. And with this happy ending, the movie ends right here.